And we're back here in Inside the Ropes, and we are joined by the one and only Mr. Colt Cabana.
I just shrank. I can't help it.
It's very hard when I meet you to not do the Grado. Colt Cabana, it's yourself.
Oh, the other day, I don't know if you caught that on Grado's Instagram stories, but a fan came to me and he was like, "Oh, this fan's coming," and he wanted you to see his tattoo. And he never came to the show, but eventually the fan showed me the tattoo, and he had a Colt Cabana "It's Yourself" tattoo. Tattooed on his chest, and then I sent it to Grado, and he couldn't have been happier.
That's dedication right there.
But yeah, Grado couldn't have been happier. I was a little weirded out.
So I want to start off with a kind of cheap plug, but I think it's necessary. You're doing your show at the Fringe. It's like year 6, year 5. Now that you're doing it, year.
What cheap plug? Are you talking about this show, Brendan Burns and Colt Cabana do comedy and commentary to bad wrestling? Yeah, every single night we're doing it at the Monkey Barrel, 11 p.m. to the end of the month, which is August 26th, which is a Sunday.
One of the compliments I want to give you about it is that I've been to see the show like most years, and I'm a wrestling fan, so I get it. But you don't need to be a wrestling fan to see it. I mean, it's bonkers, and I've seen people who come along, they just laugh with it, because the stuff that you show is mental, no matter whether you watch wrestling or not.
Yeah, it's. Well, you guys, if I said a clip show, do you guys have that kind of stuff, like Tosh.0 and stuff, right? So it's kind of that, and we're just showing weird, wild shit, and pardon my language, but fuck it, I swore on here, and I'm going with it. Yeah, it's wild stuff. So anyone who likes, who's just into anything, it doesn't have to be wrestling. It just so happens that the clips are about wrestling, and I found like how much I really enjoy watching and like dissecting like 70s and early 80s wrestling, because it's just such a different era. It was so weird, and so that's why it's kind of fun today to kind of dissect it in a stage show in front of a crowd. It's just how weird the 70s and 80s were.
So get along to that. Follow Colt Cabana on Twitter, get tickets and all that good stuff. But also, you're going to be with me at Wrestling MediaCon in September. You're going to be there with your podcast and all that kind of stuff. Are you looking forward to doing that? Because you are basically, in terms of wrestling media, in the modern age, you're one of the kind of pioneers with podcasting. Which,
was a big almost struggle or leap, or I'm not sure. When I started the podcast in 2010, there was a big thing in my head of like, well, am I going to be called a mark by the wrestlers because I'm doing this thing? Because it had not been done really, for the most part, by wrestlers who were currently wrestling on a full-time schedule and kind of jumping in the media or doing something weird like this. And, I made the decision to say like, oh, I don't care to be judged or what they care. Like, I know that podcasting is going to be something awesome. I love podcasts. No one's really doing what I want to do for the wrestlers, so I'm going to start it. And I made that leap. And I was one of the first, if not the first, to kind of do that long form, kind of in the business, already doing it with my peers, and it saved my career and it made my career, really. Now that I think about it, looking back, now that's almost been 20 years for me in wrestling, and so the MediaCon I think is a great thing. The internet. The first time I came to England was 2003 because somebody in England watched my IWA Mid-South matches because they tape traded with somebody from the internet. Like, that's why. And Alex Shane hit me up, and he's just like, "We've never met before, but you want to come to England?" And of course I do. And that's, where I fell in love with the UK, the UK scene and the UK wrestlers, even before this grand UK revival or whatever it is, and God, was it 2004 when I came over, and I watched the Spuds and the Mastiffs and and the Rampages. Like, I was watching them like just start and wrestling and probably hating that the American was coming over and taking their jobs. That's usually how it works over here. But there's so many amazing wrestlers, and it's now like we're finally seeing them shine. And that's all part of kind of being in the business and being kind of, part, I guess, the media, I guess. I don't know.
Well, so for us, Inside the Ropes, we're a fan podcast, essentially. We've never wrestled or anything like that. But what I thought was interesting for us, maybe there's something in it, but we started in 2012, and, we have like thousands of listeners every week. But I feel like if we'd started 2014, it'd been a different story, because now every wrestler has a podcast. So I wonder from your perspective, it's different for you because you are a wrestler, but how did you find over the years that the art of wrestling dealt with there being so many other podcasts that come out, which essentially mean that, you know, if you only have 10 hours of podcasting, you have to start choosing?
Yeah, of course. And I don't know if it's a saturated market because right now, you know, 2 years ago we said it was a saturated market, and now, you know, maybe in 2 years we'll be like, oh, if only in 2018 we started that podcast, because now in 2020 it's so saturated. But I always, because I started very early and people that wanted to listen and commit to podcasts jumped on board, and essentially what happened was the Austins and the Jerichos and the Jim Rosses, they all started, and I really cultivated the people that enjoyed podcasting for me, right? Like what I did, my sense of humor, my style, the way I vision, and I have visions within pro wrestling. And so the people that just, I guess, only wanted what they wanted, you know, maybe they went and slowly, you know, trimmed off my listenership and went over to Austin, went over to Jericho. But I really have an unbelievable group of people who have been listening to me for, you know, over 8 years now. And that's the way I looked at it, was I've almost like collected these fans who really get me, people who support me, and especially like, you know, I'm not ran by the machine, you know, so it's all DIY. It's literally like I only can be a wrestler and in the media because people want to listen and support.
And you know, you've had a lot of big podcasts. You had Austin on your podcast and all that kind of stuff. One of the most interesting ones I think you did was your diary of the trial recently, and you could kind of hear the pain of you having to talk about that, going through this thing. And I guess now, you know, we're out of it. You won the trial, yay for you. I mean, how are you feeling now? Because it is one of those things, I think a lot of people, whether you're a wrestling fan or not, when you read the story and what was going on, you kind of go, why is he involved? Like, it really felt unfair that you were, but are you able now to kind of start to move past it?
Yeah. And you'll hear, and so the podcast I did, which I think was episode 11 on the refresh and the restart of the art of wrestling. So of course, eventually I thought the long form, you know, there's only so many times you can listen to all these people. You know, years ago, like there was only, like Regal wasn't doing these long form interviews or podcasts or conversations, and like it was mind blowing, I guess, for a lot of people. Johnny Saint, Roller, you know, that I was talking with these people, and now it's kind of it's not an everyday thing, but it's happening a lot. And so I have changed my podcast to kind of a road documentary, if you will, like an NPR kind of docu-series, and it's post-produced, and I'm really proud of it. And it just so happened that within the new rebrand, this trial was within it, and so I documented the whole trial. Now, I didn't know that WrestleZone was going to be there. The very first day, when they selected the jury, there was nobody there. And so that's when I was like, okay, this whole thing needs to be documented. And luckily, you know, Nick and Ross from WrestleZone, they did come and they did document it. And I thought they did an amazing job of just telling it how it was. And I think when telling it how it was, everyone kind of saw, yeah, like, you know, I think for Punk, obviously, but I think especially for me, it's just like, why am I in here? And then afterwards, and this is all documented, you know, I talk about it on the podcast, is the jury was just like, we didn't, from minute one, we were like, why is this guy in here? And we all felt that. You know, I felt that from day one, but that was 3.5 years ago, and all that, just everything, all the pressure and all the anxiety and all of it just all built up. And I didn't realize that it would build up so much. Like, I just kind of like accepted it and dealt with it. You know, I had Lanny Poffo on my podcast. I don't know if you've ever talked with Lanny on here. Yeah, and he's so great, and he would talk about the happy bus, and that was something that really hit with me. Was like, you have two buses in life. You could choose to get on the happy bus or the sad bus. Like, which one do you want to go on? Well, I choose to go on the happy bus, like the great Lanny Poffo was taught by the great Red Bastien. And so I really just was like, I'll go to the jury, you know, I'll go to the trial, and we'll get it over with. And of course, that's what happened, but my mind said, like, I'm good now, and my body did not. So, like, my body did completely shut down. So in episodes 12 and 13, especially episodes 12 on The Art of Wrestling, you hear me, like, trying to be upbeat in my intro, and it's not there, and I'm like a defeated human being, even though I was victorious. But
there's almost a charm to that they were getting to know you and getting to know that, you know, you're maybe not okay after something like that straight away. There's something about the realness of that I think people like.
And that's what I want. You know, I want people to feel those emotions. I want people to go through that roller coaster and that ride with me. And that's the intimacy of podcasting since day one. in 2010, and I knew that from listening to other people on podcasts back, then when it was just kind of starting to the big comedy boom of 2009 podcasting in America, at least. I know the UK it took so much longer to get over, and it's like just starting, But I knew that, and so I knew the power of the medium, and so that's why I started podcasting, because of that intimacy and wanting people to know my story, especially in 2010 when I had been fired by WWE. That was my dream job. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I knew I was a good wrestler. I knew people liked me, but I didn't know how to get my message out there. I didn't have a vehicle like Raw or SmackDown or Impact. I didn't, and so this was my vehicle. And now, we have a whole media convention based off of it.
And one of the things that I thought was funny when you were talking about the podcast from the trial was like, because the infamous podcast in 2014, everybody listened to it. The internet broke when it came out, trying to download it. But you were saying like people were listening to it, and like, your lawyer had said like, why are we listening to this for so long?
He thought it was awful. He hated the podcast. And it's right, the whole wrestling community, their minds were blown by it. And just to a normal civilian, he was like, Snorefest, this why do people care about this? And it's so, our worlds, it's like, we're in this niche, weird pocket that not everyone even knows. It's so important to us, right? Like everything, we hang on everything. Who did what? Who did backstage what? We hang on all of it. And there's such a minuscule amount of people that really, really care about it in the whole world. But it's our world, and that's why I think it's so much fun, and that's why I think it's such a great community. And
so I saw a parallel, I thought, in my mind about you and Cody Rhodes a little bit, because he left WWE and he wanted to make a name for himself and do something different. And he left WWE on his own accord.
He did, yeah. I was fired out the door. Thanks, Kevin Dunn.
But in saying that, when you left, you also, because WWE was also your dream job, and it was a job that you wanted, and you have, like, over the last 8 years, done every different thing that's possible in wrestling.
Made my own path, right?
Yeah. Is that something where now you look at guys like Cody and you kind of go, it's good to see other people who are choosing to try and not just take the sort of what's given and kind of go, no, I think I can do this as well.
You just see the difference in the wrestlers that, and I don't, Damien Sandow would be a great example, right? Like, I think if Damien Sandow, and I love Damien Sandow, I wrestled him when he, after he was done, but he was so hot on television, and if you don't, take it upon yourself, and you just think, just like WWE did everything for me, if you think, well, everyone else will do something for me, it's just not how it works in the independent world. And Cody was smart enough and is smart enough to realize, I have to do stuff. I have to be my own machine. I have to be my own, everything. PR, agents, finance, selling your merch, all of that stuff. Cody gets it, and there's just different categories of people who get it and do not get it. And that's not to say Damien Sandow doesn't get it, but I think at the time, also when you leave. Just like that trial, when you leave WWE, it's a real shock. It's a real wake-up call. And that's what you wanted to do your whole life. And so it's either, for me, I don't know if you remember, I wrestled PWG the very next night. It was like, I've got to get back to and I was depressed. I was super depressed. And I remember being so down for about 2 or 3 months, but the only time I was happy was when I was in the ring. Like, I remember just being so happy wrestling and being in the ring, and then I'd get back to the locker room and I'd just be like, ugh, right? And you have to fight through it. And I think by the time some of these wrestlers maybe fight through it, then their window of opportunity is kind of sank. And I appreciate the comparison to Cody. I think there's a lot of differences, but he's done an amazing job, and obviously All In is such an obvious example of that. Just what him and the Young Bucks together, along with the whole Being the Elite crew, because that's kind of what it is. It's it's what my vision was. Honestly, like it's what my vision was, and it's what I thought. I was like, I'm at the highest power. Like when I was able to bring in an extra 100 people, I was like, I'm doing it. To an indie show that usually had 400 and they had 500. It's like, this is what it's all about. I got 100 people in line, to sell merchandise. Like, I am bringing the power to independent wrestling. And then I see what the Bucks, especially with the Bucks, they have blown it out of the water, and they are such they're so admirable for what they're doing.
And you know, you're doing so many things. You do the podcast, you're doing these shows in Edinburgh, you've done commentary, all that kind of stuff with Ring of Honor. And I want to ask you a little bit lastly about the Ring of Honor New Japan Super Show coming to Madison Square Garden the night before WrestleMania. It almost feels like maybe there's a bit of a change coming in terms of, you know, while there's independent wrestling, this seems to be something that's a kind of almost a direct hit that's like not really happened before on like a WrestleMania weekend in Madison Square Garden, something like that. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, you see, you know, I'm with Ring of Honor and I'm doing the commentary, and you know, I started at the Murphy Rec Center in front of 250 people, and we thought that was unbelievable. And you know, it's a lot of it's direct with, I think, being the elite and the success of those guys, and then also the Ring of Honor product and everyone behind it, and Joe Koff and everybody, and just building it and putting money behind it, and that's how stuff will grow. You have to spend to make, and I think also to throw 1 hour tees and pro wrestling tees in there too, because I think Ryan does a great job of spending to make. And so, yeah, I've seen the you know, the crowds and the venues that we run go from 1,000 to 1,500, and then we're running a 2,500 seat place, and I'm just like, oh, we're not going to fill this place, and then it's just totally, you know, full. And last year was 6,500 in Florida, and New York is as big as it gets. And of course, you know, I don't think anyone's denying that we're piggybacking off of the idea of WrestleMania. Like, everyone's gathering, but you know, if it's 80,000, how many will go?
Yeah, 80,000.
80,000. So if you take 10%, that's 8,000. So maybe you take 20%. Like, that's what we are. I think this internet's kind of a little deeper niche community. So it's not weird to think that 16,000 people won't want to come to Madison Square Garden to watch Ring of Honor and the Super Show. Listen, no one. Between the wrestlers, when we were talking all in, we were thinking, I don't know, 5,000, maybe 6,000, 10,000 plus in 30 minutes, and it probably would have been less. So, like, it's obviously possible. And I think the idea of just Madison Square Garden, and you also better believe I will politic as much as I can to get a match in Madison Square Garden, because who knows if that will ever happen.
It needs to happen. We need to make a Kickstarter campaign, get it going now.
Oh, yeah, I don't even know. A hashtag. But maybe it's too early right now. Let's start it like around January, all right?
Maybe December, like really get it going first.
Okay. But you know,
Colt, I want to thank you very much. We'll see you at WrestleMediacon. You can get the ticket information below. Come and see him at the Fringe. He is very, very funny, and as is Brendan Burns. Yeah, come to our show, ColtCabana.com, Twitter and Instagram. And these are my new shirts at ColtMerch.com. Wrestling for free speech. I fought for you. Now, buy from me. Thanks.